What's going, y'all? It is Cop Pizzle, and I've got to go ahead and just bring him right on. Chris, the Entertainer. Going to be chatting it up with Pizzle here, talking a little Giants football. Sad times right now, and during sad times, we need to have sit down and have conversations for peace of mind, if you will. What's going on, Chris?
My mic sucks. I think I just muted it, so I'm just gonna go with the crap mic so this doesn't cut out throughout the stream. But yeah, I'm excited to come on here. Haven't talked with you. I don't even remember the last time.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. We've had our differences, both you and.
Whatever. But
either way, I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you something. I don't know if you've seen this, but I had this made, and it was just in good fun, right? Because again, I've kind of, and I'll explain it once I get it. But I've shown this on my channel a few times, but I want to show it to you just in case you haven't seen it yet. You might get a good laugh out of it.
I don't think I have.
All right, here we go.
And I don't want to miss a thing. Hey.
What are you doing here?
I was just passing by on there. I came.
Who's he? That man's a salesman. Would you go inside? Thank you.
You got big.
Can't come around like this. The court says you can't. It confuses me.
No, I know. I wanted to say that I'm sorry about everything. And I got something coming up. Something kind of big. You just might be proud of me. Would you do something for me? Would you just give him this? You don't have to tell him who it's from. Just. And I don't want to miss a thing.
Now that you showed it to me, yeah, I did see it when you first made it.
Man, listen. So I thought it was funny because I remember when you just started on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you this little guy, and then all of a sudden you got big. And of course, I was always, I've had my differences with both you and Bad Dog. And it's funny because we're getting ready to talk about what we've been different about.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes you just want to be like, okay, well, I'm sorry, maybe I was a little too hard in the paint, with it kind of deal. And so, but at the end, it just all centers around about the Giants, right? It's just all about our fandom of the Giants and taking this thing to the moon or the asteroid in this sense. But anyways, Armageddon, one of my favorite movies, and so I just thought it was.
Armageddon is one of my favorite bad movies. When you watch Armageddon, you're like, that's not a very good movie, but I love it. It's like one of my favorite bad movies.
It's got a fun cast. But anyways, so. Well, I mean, just tell me, so, man, as a Giants fan, this is pretty brutal right now. This is some really hard times. I mean, it's funny because I kind of thought we were over this a year ago, which is another part of the conversation that I want to have is like, it kind of felt like, especially after the Vikings playoff game, it felt like, okay, that was literally this year, 2023.
Yeah.
Literally this calendar year. I said, well, it's all over with now. The conversation about Daniel is over. The conversation that's negative about this team is pretty much over. Like, that's it. Okay. Even if we have a bad game against the Eagles in the playoffs, which we did, I kind of thought like, well, that's okay because we're behind all of the stuff that's been plaguing us for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here we are late in the year or, on the 10th month in the same calendar year. Here we are having this conversation. What, 9 months prior, like 8-9 months later?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to me that the conversation of Daniel Jones has ramped up again in a matter of 4 games. And I want you to be honest about how you feel right now, Chris, because I know you know, I know you went from, negative on the draft pick, which
Yeah,
you said your piece on it. Then you turned and I think you was team Daniel.
I
And then I
support.
think
Yeah,
you supported him. And I think you kind of thought he wasn't prior to last season. I think you thought he wasn't going to get a contract, maybe. And
yeah.
then and I think that as the year went on, you were on board all the way, and I think you were in favor of the contract by the time it was over with. So now, where do we stand now? Like where, like
Yeah. So let me talk about Daniel. Going into last year, I didn't have an agenda with Daniel one way or the other. I went into the year
yeah.
and I think I honored what I said. I said
I
if
don't, I don't, let me make that point. I don't think I've you're not like all of the other I don't think are agenda based. Let
yeah,
me say that.
try not to be,
Yeah,
but
I don't think you're agenda based. But I do think others are.
perhaps. Well, of
I do
course, there's
feel like others are.
in the base. Yeah, but
Yeah.
my mindset on Daniel Jones last year going into the season, I said it countless times. My exact words were he needs to have a Derek Carr year like the year before. When Carr took the Raiders unexpectedly to the playoffs, he overcame a lot of adversity and he got that contract from the Raiders. That was my expectations going into the year. Daniel Jones did that. Daniel Jones last year, in my opinion, did about as good as you could have expected him to. I thought he maximized his situation. Did he prove to me that he was an elite quarterback yet? No, but he definitely proved to me that it was worth finding out. And by year's end, you look where we were picking in the draft. That was the only choice Joe Shane had. It wasn't even a matter, in my opinion at least, of being team Daniel or team something else. There was nothing else. It was you keep Daniel Jones. The only question was, is it going to be on a multi-year extension or is it going to be on a franchise tag? I said it to people countless times that would throw out, possibilities. Oh, you could sign a really cheap quarterback and you could bring him in for a year. Tell me one time in the history of football, a team with a young quarterback who was coming off a playoff win replaced that young quarterback if it wasn't via the draft. It wasn't going to happen unless you were going to trade up and give up a ton of draft capital. So it only made sense to bring Daniel Jones back. So for me, it really was as clear as day by about week 8 or 9 last year what was going to happen. It was just a matter was he going to get an extension or a franchise tag? I think what happened with that was Joe Shane first went to Saquon Barkley, was hoping he'd get a multi-year deal done with Barkley that was responsible. Barkley wasn't willing to play ball, but I think Shane's initial plan, maybe it wasn't to franchise tag Jones, but he wanted to at least have the tag as leverage in the Jones negotiations so it could help drive down the price. And once we didn't play ball, Jones's side knew that they were going to have to tag Saquon Barkley because obviously it's $10 million for a running back as opposed to 32 for a quarterback. It's going to make it much easier to build your team this year. And Jones's side, rightfully so, took advantage of that. They got as much as they possibly could. But I still think it was the right decision, regardless of how this Daniel Jones thing plays out. And I can still see it playing out either way. I definitely think he could be a stopgap quarterback like an Alex Smith was for the Kansas City Chiefs or Jimmy Garoppolo was for the San Francisco 49ers. Or, hey, maybe they start to turn things around over this year and the following year, and he gets more of an opportunity with the New York Giants. But I think Shane did what was in the best interest for him. If you were in Joe Shane's shoes, that was the best decision because there's no pressure on Shane now. At the end of the day, he still has that to fall back on. Jones was never my guy. It was the only decision I could have made at the time. I'm building up the team as I go along. But the thing to me, leaving Daniel Jones out of it, and where I'm at with Daniel Jones is, if I'm being honest with you, I don't know right now. I honestly don't know. I got to see the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But the thing that's been so discouraging for me so far this year, Jones' side, it's Evan Neal. It's this offensive line. Like, by midseason this year, if Evan Neal's not showing progress, I'm going to start to label him a bust. And I'm usually a very patient guy when it comes to draft picks for the most part. I gave Andrew Thomas a ton of time. I gave all our draft picks. I tried to give as much time as I felt like was appropriate. But Evan Neal just looks lost out there to the point where I think by next year, he's probably going to be a guard, which would be an epic failure.
When he was when the draft talks were going on, there was a question of is he a tackle or is he a guard?
Yeah,
that was some of the talk. I want to not to change subjects, but the thing that's discouraging to me right now, Chris, is the fact we've struggled, right, for the last damn near decade or pretty much a decade now. I know we went to the playoffs, and obviously in 2016 we went to the playoffs. But now you're seeing Kayvon, Evan Neal, Xavier McKinney, they're chirping back at the fan base. And I've often said, and the fan base has been real hard on Daniel Jones. And I've often said, Chris, that the fan base is the team. I mean, when you think about it, the fan base is the public perception of what the team is, right? We don't like the Eagles because we hate their fans.
Of course.
Right? It's the fans. We don't like the Dallas Cowboys because we hate their fans. But if Micah Parsons got released tomorrow and we signed him, we all would love Micah Parsons. We don't hate the players. We don't even know the players.
I hate some of the players, but for the most part, I agree with you.
Well, I mean, they like
I hated Deshaun Jackson. I hated Deshaun Jackson.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I hated Romo, but you know, it's like it's the fan base. So a lot of ways the fan base to me pushes the teams. Like they push. So it's frustrating that the locker room just seems to be just despise its own fan base. Yeah. And that really beats, like, that's the part that really messes me up because, you know, I see a lot of content creators both here and on Twitter, and I see how they act. And it's upsetting to me because all of us are grouped in the same, we're like, not to make it a political thing, but we're kind of all grouped in the same box, right? You know, and so they basically just can't stand. I mean, if you listen to what they're saying, Evan Neal is, you know, I mean, you work in a hamburger shop. You're flipping burgers. You're cutting buns, right? Yeah. You know, Kayvon, the same thing. Like that's what I'm saying, Chris. Like they're clearly saying it in the media, so they're obviously saying this in the locker room behind the cameras when the mics are off. Clearly, yeah. Like this is extremely disheartening and frustrating to me.
Yeah, it started with Kayvon, I think. Right, he was kind of the first guy that he wasn't as egregious of what in terms of what Evan Neal said, but it started with him, and now Evan Neal, and to me, and Kayvon and Tony did it too. But Tony to me, it was just such a dumb comment on Evan Neal's part, and I understand some.
I don't love the comment. I don't love the comment. Yeah, I'm not. It's kind of funny.
Truth to it. Yeah. Even if there's truth to it, which listen, there's jerks. But if you're in New York, it's like what Barkley said today. It's a battle you're never going to win. So it's only going to cause negative energy towards the team. It's only going to give more, ammunition to the fan base and the media to just continue to compile and compound on this issue. And it's just going to make things worse, not just for Evan Neal, but for the team. So in my opinion, it was stupid.
Isn't this the time, though, of all times to be the most supportive of the team? I mean, and the reason I say that is because, I've been lucky enough to be on YouTube to watch them win 2 Super Bowls. Right. And there's sometimes, when you are in that position, it's like people are going to just basically call you a bandwagon fan, right? You're just, you're a bandwagon fan. Oh, you're only feeling this way because they're in the championship. Or it's easy to support them when they're winning, when they're just crushing teams. Like imagine like right now, it would be super easy to be an Eagles fan. I mean, how hard is it to be an Eagles fan right now, right? You could easily wear the gear, but to really call yourself a fan, to me, I would think that it's time to try to pick them up, to support them, to not. And again, I agree with you. Evan Neal has been terrible, and I'm going to bring up a clip that I want both of us to talk about. But to me, this is more than ever the time to try to support Daniel, to try to give him some, let him know like, hey, I know these first 4 games haven't went well, but this bashing on not only YouTube but Twitter, just this. And I don't know how much he reads or consumes, if any, but to just have this negative, feeling is just, to me, is it's, I don't know how. I'm not saying it's not fair, not warranted. I know that money gets paid to go to games and stuff like that. You buy merchandise. I get all that. But like, I mean, at what point do you have to step up and say, hey, let's try to support them as best we can?
I mean, I get what you're saying. It's why to me, it's depressing for me. That's why I've stayed off Twitter. Because I knew it was going to become a hell zone after week 1 with the Dallas Cowboys. And I know it's only going to get worse. And for me, it's just been 6 years of fighting with and debating, and it's toxic at this point.
Yeah.
You
Well, no,
know,
it kinda is. I mean, that's why it's great. That's why we just needed to get together here
I'm
because
not talking about with you. I'm talking about
no, I know.
I'm
No,
talking about
I'm
with
saying
Giants fans
no,
that think
Chris,
differently than we do.
I've been screaming for 2 weeks for
Yeah.
people to come onto my channel and, like, even I disagree with because in a lot of ways, I wanna be told that, "Hey, at this point, you need to let the Daniel Jones thing go." I want to be told that because I believe in Daniel. I think Daniel can get the job done. Now, elite, I don't care about elite. I've watched the Giants go to Super Bowls with multiple quarterbacks within my lifetime who were never considered elite. You know, that includes Kerry Collins. Eli Manning was never considered elite. Never.
He
Right?
was he was.
He was, but he was never considered elite among the national media, among a lot of fans. You know, Phil Simms was not necessarily considered elite, even though he probably had one of the greatest Super Bowl performances of all time. Jeff Hostetler was not considered like we don't have to have
I agree.
elite quarterbacks to be
It's nice.
successful.
It's nice to find one,
It's
but I
nice.
agree.
It
Yeah.
is. But the reality is they only make Mahomes is one person out of how many living in this
Well,
country.
that's my argument all the time when I get and I don't know with Jones. I have to see the whole
Mhm.
year play out before because if the Giants are picking first or second overall, I'd be honest with you, Pizzle.
Mhm.
Yes, you have to at least consider taking a quarterback, but
Okay.
let's let the year play out.
No, I'm
Yeah,
agreeing with you.
yeah.
That's what's frustrating is we've played a month
Yeah.
and we've played against 3 teams that I think arguably are playoff teams in the 49ers, Cowboys, and Seahawks. And the
I agree.
thing that we struggled with last year, even though we did beat some, we struggled with beating playoff teams a year ago. I mean, I know we did do
That
it.
to me is the depressing part. The most
Yeah.
this I mean, the Cowboys game was a gut punch. That
Yeah.
was, but I
That got
convinced
away
myself.
from us.
What'd you say?
It got away from us
It got
early.
away from us. And I convinced myself after that game mentally, okay, that was just one of those games. They're clearly a better team than us. We clearly haven't closed the gap on them. They're
Mhm.
better in the trenches still, but we're not that bad. And
Yes.
but this Seattle game was much more depressing for me when I really had time to think about it. Like the initial reaction was not nearly as bad because it was the Cowboys, it was opening game. You're thinking for months how this team's going to improve this year with Neal getting better, Jones second year in the offense. Kayvon's going to take that massive leap. Like you're so excited going into the year, coaching staff, more continuity on both sides. So that I was more depressed initially. But when I had a day to think about the Seattle game, that to me was the real, and the season's not over yet. But that
Sure.
was the real wake up call for me as a fan because I said to myself, Seattle didn't give us an A performance. Seattle didn't give us a B performance. Seattle didn't give us a C performance. Seattle played bad in that game,
Mhm.
and they still beat us by 21 points. And that to me is what is so scary. And I think when people like to point at Daniel Jones, when they like to point at Brian Dable, when they like to single one person out, it's because they want hope. That's what I said before, because they convince themselves that it's just a quick fix. If you replace Daniel Jones with this magical quarterback, this team's suddenly going to become great. That's
But
not.
not to interrupt you again, Tanner, because you say that and I get passionate.
Yeah.
It's like my passion bucket. We've been fighting this same argument since the last few years of Eli.
I've been fighting the same argument since Eli's been a member of the Giants in his prime long before it was on YouTube.
But that goes back to this even goes back to the guys who were wanting Eli the hell out. Like, get Eli out. If we get Eli out and we fix this, the whole damn thing gets fixed.
Right.
And here we are. It's like we're battling the same struggles. I want to bring up this clip, and I want us to talk about it. I want us to talk about it, and hopefully I do this correctly. Okay, so I've got some guys out there that's
I'm going to tell you before you show me this clip. I've watched a couple 22s after the fact. My initial reaction on stream was this, and I'm going to get your take on it.
Okay.
Daniel, first off, the offensive line is a disgrace. We know that.
Yes.
And I think Daniel Jones at this point is shell-shocked. I think that he's got a mental clock in his head, and he's going to his first read, and defenses know that, and they're jumping all over it. When I saw this play in real time, he completely missed Darren Waller. And what is so discouraging to me about this clip is Darren Waller's like 7 feet behind the intended target. He's got to lead Waller to the corner of the end zone on this play. That was
I'm glad you said that, Chris, because and this is why you're here today. This is why we're doing this. This to me, again, nobody ever, I get beat up all the time because they're like, you don't know how to break down tape. You don't know. And I'm actually showing the TV version of this because I think the TV version is actually the better version of all, even a better version than the all 22. And I want to talk about this. And you're right. In my opinion as well, I think Daniel Jones right now is broken.
Yeah.
Now, just because something's broken doesn't mean it can't be fixed. But I do agree that the internal clock is completely screwed up. And I believe that this play is an evidence of this. And I want to talk about this. Now, there's a lot of content creators, there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, why can't Daniel just get the ball out of his hands? Just get it out of his hand. Just get it out of it. It's weird because the narrative continues to be changed. Just throw the ball deep or just get it out of your hands quick, whatever. There's multiple different stories being told. I don't know what's true and what to buy and what to believe in, right? To have Jalen Hyatt just go on a fly route and he'll throw it deep in the whole shot, right? I mean, They just say all these things, and I'm like, which one is it? So in this video, I want to show this. Hopefully I did this correct. Okay. To me, right here, this guy right, can you see the arrow? Can you see my arrow right here?
Yeah, that's it.
This tackle right here, in my opinion, has killed this play, because I believe that Daniel, in the corner of his eye, believes that his man is beat, and he doesn't trust the guy. He doesn't trust his guard right there.
I agree.
Yeah, he's shell shocked. I don't think he trusts his man. I don't think he trusts his man to beat that man, because he sees the leverage. He sees the white, right? I mean, you got to put yourself in his position. In his eye, in the corner of his eye, he sees a lot of white jersey there, in my opinion.
I agree with this. Go ahead.
And you say, okay, well, he's got to throw to Waller, which I agree with that. After the play, it's clear as day. But at this point, Daniel has made up his mind.
But that's the problem.
No, I agree. But what I'm saying is, just let me play this out. He's already made up his mind. Waller is not. Now, you would look at that and say, oh, he's got a clean pocket, right? Clean pocket. I'm not so sure that either that Paris Campbell down here ran a great route either. But nevertheless, it's still a bad decision on Daniel's part, right? I mean, we agree that. But the fact is, you're right in the sense of he should have went to Darren Waller, but he needed to wait for the play to develop more.
Yeah.
The play needed to be more patient with this play. But his internal clock, and this is evidence right here, Chris, his internal clock is completely screwed up. In addition to that, look at his feet work. Look at his feet right here. His feet are parallel with one. Think about this for a second. If you and I are outside playing a game of catch, right? You're not going to have your feet parallel with one another.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna. I'm assuming you're right-handed.
Yeah, I am.
You're going to step with your left foot, and you're going to throw the ball. 100%, right? I mean, you point your opposite foot of your throwing hand to the direction in which you want to throw. If you throw the ball with your feet parallel like this, versus if you throw your feet with 1 foot forward, the speed in which you throw the ball is going to be completely different.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But in saying this, I mean, think about a pitcher on the mound, right? In baseball, I know you love baseball.
Mm-hmm.
If he throws from the mound with his feet parallel, he's not throwing 95 miles an hour. It's not happening. The reason why I bring this up is because he is anticipating getting hit. He's not stepping into it.
Listen, I agree with all of this.
Look, I mean, it's almost like it's a fadeaway jump shot in basketball. I
completely. That to me is the major problem, the biggest problem with this team. I'm not excusing Daniel Jones' performance. He was awful in this game. To me, he looked like a rookie in this game. But that is the biggest problem, and I do think Daniel Jones, at least thus far so far this year, he is broken. And this plays a perfect example of it. That even though the pressure isn't there yet, like we've seen Eli Manning, and make those. You think back to the 49ers game, all the hits that he took in that NFC title game. He was willing to stand in the pocket and take those hits. But Jones is just so used to, and it's kind of like Eli Manning at the end of his career, where he was kind of like this, where he just had that mental clock and he said, I know the hit's coming. I got to get rid of the ball. And I do think he's messed up doing large.
But that's what he's technically doing here. He's getting it out of his hands. Yeah. He realized it so this is to me, it's so funny because my brain's processing 1,000 miles an hour and I can't put words together. but, but he's trying his best to, in my opinion, to cope with what he's got. And he realizes that this is a huge opportunity in the game to get some points on the board, right? This is a huge opportunity. And the last thing he needs to do is take a sack. The last thing he needs to do is take a strip sack. The last thing he needs to do is get the ball tipped in the air and get intercepted, right? He sees a clear lane here because you can see it's, I mean, you can even see in between these two right here that he has a throwing lane right there. That ball cannot be tipped. He's just getting this out. And again, you're right. Throw it in the back of the end zone. Darren Waller's there.
It's a high percentage play. You're not turning it over. See if your guy can come up with it.
But I think the issue here is he already had made up his mind before Darren Waller had ran open.
And that to me is the problem. And it speaks as much to the offensive line as Jones himself. But that to me is the problem. That your quarterback doesn't feel comfortable enough to make the necessary progressions to be able to have a capable offense. The other thing, and I was on Bleacher Report yesterday, and I actually brought this point up. I think this team, and I put this on the coaching staff as much as I do, Daniel Jones and everybody else. I think this team has gotten too far away from their identity. I think going into the year, we were all excited to see an evolved offense. All of us were. The Giants were. We see the preseason game where he's throwing a Waller. I don't think they run the ball once on that first drive. And you're like, oh my God, they're going to really open up this offense. But with Andrew Thomas out, with Saquon Barkley out, with the line struggling the way it is, without Evan Neal maturing, the Giants got to get back to doing what they were doing last year. They have to become much more of a balanced offense. And the Giants this year are the complete opposite of what they were last year. Last year, they were a team that limited mistakes, that chewed up the clock, that picked up crucial third down conversions. This year, they're making all the mistakes in the world. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that this coaching staff is they're teetering in the middle. Like they're trying to become a poor man's Kansas City Chiefs and a poor man's Buffalo Bills. We're only running the ball 37% of the time. Obviously,
Which is not good.
We've been down by 40 points in a lot of these games. But I think that's some of it too, is I think they're not realizing the limitations this roster still has like they did last year. They did a great job of identifying that last year. This year, I think they're trying to force something that just is not there, especially with Barkley and Thomas out of the lineup. So I think the Giants have to get back to playing boring football. That's their best chance to win.
And I'm glad you brought up Thomas and Barkley, right?
Yeah.
And look, I need to eat a little bit of crow here.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on the board. I was on the team of we can't pay Saquon this huge contract. You can't give him you can't make him the highest paid running back. You can't let him reset the market, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, I thought the right decision was to just franchise tag him and let's play another year with Saquon, right? And obviously there was a little bit of drama in the offseason with that.
Yeah.
But I'm to the point where now it's like, I'm not. Is it fair to beat up this offense when they don't have arguably two of their best players on the field pretty much the entire season? I mean, Andrew Thomas barely got to play that Cowboy game. He hurt his hamstring on the field goal block.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it's like, is it fair as a fan base to sit here and judge what this offense is when Barkley and Thomas isn't out there? I think that plays a part into Daniel Jones' psyche right now, is the fact that he realizes that he doesn't have much of a running game with Matt Breida, and he doesn't have his franchise left tackle who clearly supported him very well a year ago. I think I think Giant fans in general, we fought.
He was an all-pro.
Well, we fought tooth and nail that he was for sure one of the best tackles in the league.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we did. And so it's almost like at what point can we? It's so funny because I don't like. I say these things, right? I put it out into the universe, Barkley, Thomas, and then it's like, well, you're just making excuses for Daniel. And it's like, I don't know. Is that not fair to do? Is that not a fair assessment to make? Is that not fair that he doesn't have one of his boys with him in Barkley, who's as clearly his running game, and then he doesn't have Andrew Thomas? To me, having Andrew Thomas, I understand that there's still four, which by the way, our center, JMS, gets hurt. He gets hurt in the game last game. He's pretty much out most of the game. And so you're talking about key elements. And people want to bring in these other teams and say, well, this team didn't have a very good offensive line, but they got the job done. I don't know if that's really fair to put that out there like that.
Yeah, I think the criticism I can make about Daniel Jones, especially in so far this year, outside of the second half of the Arizona Cardinal game, I agree that you can't expect Jones to go out there and put up gaudy statistics and this offense to be free flowing. But he still, even though he doesn't have much help, he can't lose you the football games. And the
Sure.
Seattle game, he was part of the reason, a major reason we lost that football game.
That's why I brought up that play, because to me,
Yeah.
that's the play of the game. That Seattle gets the interception, they take it back to the house, they win the game. It's game over right there. But
yeah, to me, I think back to the Cowboys game last year, and I said the first time we played Dallas when they had Rush at quarterback, and I said it all year. That was the best game Daniel Jones played all of last year. The statistics didn't say it. He only threw for like 170 yards. He threw one pick when David Sills fell down on a slant pattern at the end of the game. But the amount of pressure that he took on that game, for him to not make mistakes and keep the team in the game, that's what we need from him in a game like last week against Seattle. I don't need you throwing 3 touchdowns, but I need you to keep us in the game. And that to me is a fair criticism of Daniel Jones, even without Saquon Barkley and Andrew Thomas and this travesty of an offensive line. So I try to be fair.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I think we both openly admit that this man's internal clock is completely screwed up right now.
He's screwed up.
And so to me, I don't know how. I mean, again, neither you or I have been a professional NFL quarterback, so I don't know how fast that process can get fixed. I don't know if that's a year-long process. I don't know if that's something that can happen in a couple weeks. But to me, it's not that Daniel can't get the job done. It's just there's something wrong between his ears, and he's clearly annoyed. I don't know if you saw the clip that he had this week where, he was basically, was told that, he called the wrong play on third down. He had called the reporter kept asking him, what was the deal? And he just said, call the wrong play. And he just looks so flustered and so frustrated through all this. And, I just wonder, I bring up Thomas and Barkley, not as an excuse, and I don't show that video clip as an excuse. I just put that out there to say, maybe 1 + 1 does equal 2 here. Maybe if Thomas is out there, maybe if Barkley's out there, I'm not saying we necessarily win these games, but maybe there's an improvement that you can support Daniel a little bit better and not be this negative talk now that gets said. Well, he's a $40 million quarterback. He should carry the team on. I don't think that's fair to say to anybody, Chris. That
I listen.
I don't think that's fair.
Throw the stats out the window. He just needs to give this team the best chance to win football games. That's all I care about. And
I think that throw there obviously is on Daniel. That's on Daniel.
Yeah.
And that's a game costing play. But I mean, that's where it goes back to the point. Is he trying to do too much to carry the load?
Oh, I think he is. And I think you saw a lot of that early on in his career too, especially before Dable got there, when he used to make boneheaded decisions. Because I do think that has something to do with it. He feels like he's got to do more than he's capable of doing to win football games. To speak to Barkley, I'll say it all the time. Listen, I understand. I wanted them to extend Barkley. Now, I wanted it to be a reasonable extension. Sure. I was thinking somewhere along the lines of $22 to $24 million guaranteed. I thought that was fair. It was a little bit more than 2 franchise tags. And Barkley, again, is hurt. So not enough people are talking about that, too. So I understood why Shane did what he did. But I think Saquon Barkley is one of the most underappreciated players since I've been watching the New York Giants. And there's no doubt about it, he's had an injury history. Okay? That's football. That's bad luck. That happens, especially at that position. But when he's on the field, the difference he makes for this offense is understated by a lot of people.
I want to bring that point to you. Do you remember the play in the Seahawks game where Breida broke out down the sideline and Daniel threw it to him and Breida got tackled basically by the turf?
Yeah.
I argue that if that's Barkley, that may be a touchdown.
But it probably would have been.
And
but it's not even just that. It's everything else. The attention that he commands in opposing defense. That helps Daniel Jones's legs. That helps open up the passing game. You think about what Barkley's been able to do. When you talk about how the offensive line has been for Daniel Jones, and it's been bad since he's been in the league. It's been just as bad for Saquon Barkley. And he's still been able to produce at a high level when he's been healthy. So, we had Giants fans 2 or 3 years ago telling me that Wayne Gallman was better than Saquon Barkley. He is so important to this team. It's why I wanted them to keep him and make him as happy as they possibly could within reason. I didn't want him to give him a McCaffrey contract. But it is what it is. Yeah, when he gets back in the lineup, if he's healthy, he's going to help. And obviously, Andrew Thomas is, in my opinion, the second most important player on this offense. Without him, we had like the 30th ranked offensive line last year when Andrew Thomas played like an all-pro. You take him off the line, and it's just an absolute disgrace. Azudu is awful. Like the line is just a mess. And it sickens me, but I don't think this team's close to competing until that line starts to make major progress. We're not beating Dallas, and we're not beating the Eagles. And if we're being honest with ourselves, if they missed on Neal, which you have to at least start to have in the back of your head, they may have, at least as a tackle. Maybe he'll transition to guard and play good. We're years away from having a good offensive line. We're talking about already firing our offensive line coach. I understand it. Well, now now they're going to have to learn a whole new blocking scheme and everything. Sure. So it's just a constant turnover. That's the way the Giants have been. It's a mess.
So you want to know what I'm suffering a little PTSD from here?
Yeah.
And I think you'll kind of agree with me on this, because I think you've been on YouTube for this whole period of time of when this is happening. We had the little thing with McAdoo, right? We go into year 2 thinking things are going to be great. Ends up being a disaster, right? Yeah. We have the thing with Shermer. We're a little bit positive about it. That ends up being a disaster. Joe Judge. I mean, let's face it. Year 2, I think all of us, in fairness, were all in on the Joe Judge. I mean, we were.
It was for me. It was about hope more than anything else.
But we're all believing. We're all believing, right? We've had this ever since Coughlin. We've had this deal where we get coaches, and then year 2, it just collapses. And I'm terrified that that's what's happening here with Dable a little bit. It's crazy to think that, but that's happened to us, Chris, the last several years. And when you bring up Evan Neal and you bring up even Daniel here, there has to be some responsibility of the coaching staff to coach these players, to make them better. They have to play a part in this. They can't just sit back and blame players, and players can't just sit back and blame coaches. Everyone has to have some responsibility here. And to me, this team, in addition, I know Daniel didn't play good on Monday, but they looked undisciplined.
Yeah.
They looked completely
like 5 or 6 special teams penalties.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what, and so it's where I'm saying, Chris, and this is why we're having this conversation here, is like, I see all of the conversation about Daniel, both on YouTube, both on Twitter. I see all that, but then I'm like, wait a minute, what about these other things? Why is Dable not taking Dable deserves a little heat. And I know that he had the little iPad toss thing, right? Mm-hmm. Not a great look. I don't personally mind that. I'm one of these that I think your coach should coach your players hard. I'm not necessarily say show them up, but I remember Bill Parcells chewing that ass out. You see it in other sports as well. Like, I don't hate that, but it's like Dable, it's almost like this video of Dable throwing this iPad is giving other Giant fans, especially the ones that are anti-Daniel Jones, this ability to say, yeah, I told you so. But Dable's got to take some responsibility here as well, right? I mean, surely.
Of course. When things are this bad, and I go back to saying what I said earlier, I think people are pointing at Daniel so they have hope. They're like, oh, it's all Daniel. You replace him, we're good to go. When a team is this bad, we're talking about historically bad offensively. We've scored 46 points in 4 games, and if you take away that half, we've scored 15 points in 14 quarters. We're averaging a point a quarter. When your offense is this bad, it's not one person. It's not just Daniel Jones. It's not just the offensive line. It's not just the injuries. It's not just Brian Dable. It's not just the schedule we're playing. It's a culmination of everything. You can't be this bad. So I think there's nobody that should be getting any kind of praise right now on this offense. I think everybody should shoulder some of the responsibility. Of course, Daniel's going to shoulder the most of it because he's the quarterback and because he just got a mega contract. So I understand it, but there's a lot more to it than just the quarterback. There's a lot more.
Are we heading into another year 2 disaster? It would be hard pressed.
I don't think so. Now, what I will say, Pizzle, is I do think this year's trending towards like a 6-win season. I'll be honest. I'm not going to lie about that.
Yeah.
I think this with
Maybe
this
7.
schedule and the way this team looks, I'd be surprised if we win more than 7 games. I don't think we're going to even win that many, but I'd be surprised if we win more than 7 games. But I don't, and maybe this is blind faith. Maybe I'm stupid. I don't know. I don't feel that way. I do think Dable and Shane are going to figure this out. And I understand people are starting to have their reservations with Shane because they go back and look at his draft from 2 years ago and they say you took Evan Neal 7th overall. You took Kayvon 5th overall. He's shown glimpses of being really good, but he's got to get more consistent. Wandell's been, hurt a lot, even though I like the way that they used him last game. Hopefully they build off of that, but he's been hurt. Zudu, I mean, come on. So Flott can't get on the field. So I understand people are starting to look at that draft and they're saying, is this Gettleman all over again? Is this a disaster all over again? I don't feel that way. I do think they're going to get this going down the right path, but this year might be a speed bump and they might have to alter their plans. But I do think they have a plan and I do think they work well together. So I'm not saying we're going to be a Super Bowl team, I hope, in the not too distant future, but I do have faith that we have a smart head coach and a smart general manager, and they're going to get this team headed in the right direction, hopefully sooner than later. But
we've had a ton of turnover.
Yeah.
The last several years. And I've always been, look, I supported Dave Gettleman. I bought into the Joe Judge hype. I want to be support, but it's really all about the fact that the Giants, in my opinion, need constant structure and an identity. Like when you have constant turnover, you're just completely resetting. And so a lot of the things, this is where it goes back to bringing up Daniel a little bit. It's like, I know that there's some previous time there before Dable, but technically we're in year 2 with him. This is year 2 for Joe Shane and Dable. And really, you can argue that they really only had one true off season because the previous one, they had just, that was a shorter off season for them because they just got hired. Whereas this past one, they had a full off season from the moment that the season ended all the way to the start of the season. So that's to me a full one. Whereas the other one, they're just, putting their staff together, putting pieces together, so it's a full off season, but it's just a little bit, it's not as complete as this previous one was. So I agree. I mean, like his draft picks have been extremely, in a lot of ways, some kind of questionable.
Yeah.
I mean, I was concerned the night that they drafted Kayvon because I knew what type of player Kayvon was, and I knew that he could get a little vocal, and I knew how Giant fans are, right? Giant fans can sometimes be a little rough, I still remember Michael Strahan and the reporter, and he's eating the apple thing, like just always, you could see Giant fans in the past being frustrated at things, right? Even guys like Tiki Barber, who in a lot of ways I consider him a Giants legend, but even Giant fans have there's some that can't stand him, right? And he did a lot for the Giants organization, but it's just one of them things where it's like you just could see it. You could see it coming, and when it's happened so far this season, it's just been so disheartening to see it play out. And I'm not saying that Dable has lost this team. I don't think he's necessarily lost this team, and I don't necessarily think he believes that he's lost the locker room. But it just seems eerily similar to what we have seen the last several years, and I'm hoping that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you could do is hope, right? And hey, maybe it's blind faith on my part. For me, it's just I don't know. For me, I've just gotten run down just talking about the only topic to talk about. Why do we suck? What's the reason we suck?
I know. That's
says it's it's only the quarterback, or it's mainly the quarterback. I think we're more in sync with I think you're a little more pro Daniel Jones than me, but I definitely don't think Daniel Jones is the main culprit for why this team is the way that they are. I think the main reason is with the offensive line and the constant turnover. But I am also of the mindset of, if the right opportunity presents itself, yes, I would, if we were in the right spot, look to upgrade the quarterback position. That's where I'm at with the situation. But obviously I'm not forcing it. You got to be picking.
Aren't we pretty much, look, and I don't want to use this word stuck, but I'm going to say it. Because I don't feel like we're stuck, but we're tied to Daniel this year and next year. I know that everyone likes to talk about it.
Of course, he's going to be the starter all year.
Mm.
Next year, contractually, yes, he's going to be.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is
But if
contractually.
we get the first pick, we're drafting Caleb Williams. Let's be
But
real.
it can't be that bad.
No, I don't think it will be. I don't think it
Yeah.
will be. I think we'll be picking like 8th or 9th. I think a lot of people that are thinking we're going to be picking 3rd or 2nd or 1st aren't taking into account that the tiebreaker is strength of schedule, and the Giants' strength of schedule is going to be very high. So the higher the strength of schedule, the worse you rank in the tiebreaker. I don't see us being. I think we're going to be in the maybe around 8, 9, or 10 in the draft
But
order.
Giant fans, if this season continues to go poorly, Giant fans are going to want somebody's head to roll.
Yeah, they're going to have to fire some of the coaches.
Which
that's what's going to happen.
Well, but here's going back to the offensive line a little bit. I cannot believe, and again, it's been a little bit injury plagued, but I cannot believe, Chris, out of all the years we've been going through this, that they have not fixed that one piece of unit. I'm baffled. I'm baffled by it. I'm baffled. And here's the thing. I know that we said the things that we said. You and I both were Eli Manning guys. I know that for a fact. And in a lot of ways, we were going to defend Eli regardless of the situation. But there was obviously some offensive line issues there. And then to see Daniel go through this process, I'm sitting there thinking and of course, I'm not as tied to Daniel as I was Eli. The Super Bowls really married me to Eli. I mean, I wasn't going anywhere. I mean, if it was my choice, Eli would still be out there QB, and even though he probably can't do it, right? I mean, I was married to that guy, but Daniel, I'm not necessarily married to, because he hasn't brought that kind of history and glory, if you will, to the Giants organization. It's really just one of the things where it's I watch all the other quarterbacks in the league, and look, I get it. Mahomes is great, Justin Herbert's great, right? Josh Allen's great. They have their issues as well, but obviously they're great players. And they also, I don't think Herbert's on necessarily a great team, but Buffalo's a great, they're a really nice team. The Chiefs are a really nice team. But it's just really frustrating to sit here and say, man, it's just the offensive line cannot ever get it right. And I don't want to be that way, Chris. I don't want to sit here and blame the offensive line every single year. At some point, I think the offensive line has to step up and play. But to watch Monday night and say 11 sacks, and then I'm sitting there trying to dissect.
Would have been 15.
Yeah, but how many is that total for the year?
I know we're second. Hal is the most, and Jones is the second most sack quarterback. I think we have 19 total, 18 or 19.
And I know some people have already started to break down this many goes to Jones solely, But again, it goes back to that internal clock of when he leaves the pocket and the pocket's okay, but he's leaving it because he's I don't want to say he's seeing ghost out there. I mean, it's just one of them things where it's I'm frustrated, man. I'm tired of having you mentioned about the being frustrated about the same conversation. I'm tired of talking about the offensive line. I'm so over the offensive line.
It's one of those things that you have to keep talking about because it's the problem. And I'm with you. I'm sick and tired of talking about it. It's redundant. It's repetitive, but it's the truth. You can't win in this league, especially in this division. Do people really think if this offensive line doesn't get significantly better and this pass rush doesn't get significantly better, we're just going to draft some magical quarterback and Drake May's going to come on this team and you're going to be able to beat the Dallas Cowboys with Micah Parsons? You're going to be able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles with their pass rush? Are you kidding me?
That's the argument that I'm making, Chris, is you can say all you want to about bringing in so-and-so, but I don't see how that changes anything. It didn't change anything when you replaced Eli and you brought in a more mobile quarterback. Daniel is arguably the one, if you in a straight line, him and Lamar Jackson would have a hell of a race, in my opinion, because they are. I mean, out of all the quarterbacks in the league, Daniel's super fast. He just is. But he somehow, but he doesn't have the athleticism as Lamar. Lamar's obviously a lot, when he's in a phone booth, if you will, he can find his way out. Whereas Daniel doesn't have that. But in a straight line speed situation, he runs like a damn deer, man. He just does.
He does.
He
He's not
runs
elusive like Lamar, but
No, he's
yes,
not elusive. No, I agree with that. Athletically, Lamar is better in that regard, but straight line speed runs like a damn deer.
he does.
And so it's really that's where I'm going with this is like you a lot of the quarterbacks that get brought up are always guys that can leave the pocket, right? They've got special arm talents. You even see like the Jets, with Zach Wilson, right? I mean,
He looked
that's
good.
another he looked fantastic coming out of BYU.
No, he
He
looked
looked
good last week.
no, he did no, he did look good last week. And
Yeah.
that part too is frustrating to me. Is like I don't think the Jets offensive line's any good, but how is it that their team, granted, I don't know, they for sure probably have Garrett Wilson's an amazing receiver. He's a great player. And I don't know if the Giants have a Garrett Wilson on this roster,
They
if
don't.
I'm just being honest. I mean, I don't think they do. But y that's the frustrating part is I was really in tune with that, not because of Taylor Swift, but I was in tune with that game, the Jets-Chiefs game, and then 24 hours on the same field later, you see this Giants team, and you're just like, "What a disaster this is."
Yeah.
And Zach Wilson, it's funny because I think Zach Wilson and Daniel Jones in a lot of ways they're kind of alike in a lot of ways.
I
And
can see
they
that.
have their similars. I know Daniel's had more success in terms of a playoff win and whatnot, but Zach came out with a lot of talent. He was a high draft pick. And to me, I look at I hear Giant fans bring up this idea of getting someone else and like, what if you go out and you get a Zach Wilson? I'm not saying bring him in. I'm saying what if you draft a guy like him and then this process never gets fixed?
Well, yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look at the Jets. They're a prime example. They took Mark Sanchez, I think, 5th overall. They took Sam Darnold 3rd overall. They
Yeah.
took Zach Wilson 2nd overall. And the common theme, it's not like those guys didn't have talent. The common theme there is they were not set up for success.
Yeah.
So if the Giants don't fix what the real problem is,
Yeah.
I'm not excusing Jones. He's part of the problem. He's the quarterback. The team has scored 3 points at home in 8 quarters. He needs to shoulder some of the responsibility. But the real deep problem is the offensive line. You're going to become what the Jets have been when it comes to the quarterback position. You're just going to squander high pick after high pick after high pick, and they're going to come in and they're not going to be successful. You have to fix the line. You have to fix the surrounding cast. And I look at it, Pizzle, and I'm saying to myself, and again, if I'm Shane, because I think about this like from Joe Shane's perspective more so than my own. When I think about what they're going to do. If I'm Shane and we're picking top 2 or 3, I saw people in the chat asking me, well, why would you take a quarterback then? If I'm Shane, if I have a top 2 or 3 pick, I'm taking a quarterback. The reason is because if I don't in that spot, I am now married to Daniel Jones. And if Daniel Jones fails, I get fired. If I get to draft my guy, it buys me more time because now he's a rookie. He gets year 2, and I get to continue. I get a little bit more of a leash. So that's what I think will happen if we have a top 2 or 3 pick.
But didn't you technically marry him when you gave him $40 million a year?
There's an out after 2 years. To me, it's kind of like it was kind of a move where he had no choice but to do it. He's still not his guy. I think if you gave him that Hurts-like contract, but if he bypasses a quarterback with a top 2 or 3 pick, he's his guy now. That you're sinking and swimming, you're going to swim or sink with Daniel Jones. That's the way I look at it. So that's
but you're saying that in regards of if the rest of the 17 game schedule continues to go.
I'm saying if it's a bombshell,
yes.
and we have a top 2 or 3 pick, that I would be shocked if Shane didn't take a quarterback.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen.
And see, I'm okay, Chris. I'm okay. Listen, I understand that other people are going to view this team differently than I do. That's fine. I have no problem. I understand that people are going to view certain positions, right? I've been the biggest Darius Slayton, homer fan than almost anybody, right? I've always believed in Darius Slayton, right? Now, I don't know if I don't believe that he's a number 1 receiver, but I believe in Darius Slayton. And it sucks because he hasn't done anything this year yet. There's been no skill position players have great games. I know Jalen Hyatt had a couple big plays in the Arizona game, but it's just like you're just dying to see this. Where's like Darren Waller, like Jalen Hyatt? You're just dying to see these guys.
And I put that as much on Dable and Kopka as anybody else. You have a weapon like Darren Waller. we saw it in the first preseason game where they got to play with the first unit for the one drive. How
Mhm.
do they not? How is Weller not more involved on the opening drive? I get from within the game, there's adjustments made on the defense, but the first 12 plays or 15 plays or whatever are usually orchestrated by going into the game. You
I
had
think
11
he's
games
stuck
to prepare for
blocking,
that
Chris.
game.
I think
11
he's stuck
games.
blocking, though,
You gotta get this. You gotta give this guy some opportunities in open space. Draw up some
which is
plays.
another thing, happened in the Seattle game. Bellinger got hurt. He
Yeah,
got
he did.
knocked out of the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so now you're stuck with Waller basically having to block because the tackle that you drafted, which, Evan Neal, it's funny because when you go back and you look at Alabama tackles, I follow the SEC closely. They're either boom or bust. Like, just
Yeah.
if you go back and look at the history of Alabama, and it's, mainly because when they, in college, they get to play with 5-star guys right next to them. I mean, it's easy when the guy that's the guard next to you is 5-star as well, And so I was concerned about that, when he took Kayvon and Evan Neal. I had my concerns that night. I really did. And now to see it happen the way it's happening. And again, I'm not out on Kayvon. I'm not out.
You shouldn't
I just
be. I
don't
think
have.
he's looked good the last 2
Yeah,
weeks. You
I'm not
shouldn't.
out on Kayvon. I think sometimes the expectations that Giant fans put on him are a little tough. Like I feel like he's doing his job. Evan Neal, that's a I'm not ready to put him in the Eric Flowers category yet, but like he is extremely frustrating because he's not helping the guy that I really want to support and see be successful, and that's Daniel. There's a lot of me as a fan, Chris, I openly admit this. I like Gettleman. Like I thought he had some awkward moments, right? I don't think he was very sociable, but I thought his player, I liked a lot of the players that he brought in, right? He got the coach wrong, Joe Judge. He got that wrong clearly, right? But I liked a lot of the players he brought in. I didn't hate their Leonard Williams trade, right? I liked Daniel Jones. I liked the Saquon Barkley pick, right? I like Darius Slayton. There's a handful of players. I like Andrew Thomas, right? I mean, I like the players that he brought in.
Thomas, Dexter Lawrence,
Dexter Lawrence. I still to this day say he won the OBJ trade, right?
He
100%.
definitely won the OBJ trade. That's not even
Well,
a debate.
there's some people that don't believe that, but I believe that.
He won the OBJ trade.
But
The issue with the OBJ trade, he definitely won it. The issue with the OBJ trade is he never replaced OBJ. But
Yes.
you spent that money on Golden Tate.
Well, it's
That's the
frustrating. It's frustrating because I think Jalen Hyatt can be the replacement that we desperately, but we can't get the ball to him. We can't do anything with him. With that special player that makes those special plays, and you saw a little bit of it in the Arizona game, but it's just not been there. But the reason I bring up the Gettleman thing is I see Joe Shane give these guys contracts, right? You see him give Daniel a contract. Technically he gave Barkley a contract, right? Short term. He gives Dexter a contract, right? You see these players that we were building with a previous general manager still stay on board, and you think, well, maybe now that general manager just thinks that, well, they just needed better coaching, right? And so you go out and get Dable, and so you think it's just such an internal. There's something so internally wrong here, Chris. I don't know if it's just at the surface that we can even see.
It's a mess.
Does that make, you know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like there's something that's wrong that we as fans aren't able to view, and then we're constantly fighting over things like Daniel Jones. But the reality is like it's just nothing's ever working, yet we constantly blame somebody and we fix it. We fix that somebody, and then nothing ever happens.
And if you keep replacing everybody, and I get it. If it's not working, you got to make changes. But if you keep replacing everybody, eventually you have to create some kind of stability. And if you keep replacing everybody, you become the New York Jets. And the Jets.
Yes.
The Jets are really good right now. I think their team is definitely headed down the right path. But you become what the Jets have been. You're constantly, we got a high pick, got to take a quarterback, got to take quarterback, got to take quarterback, got to fire the coach, got to fire the coach, got to fire the coach, change offensive coordinator, change up. You got to find some sense of stability, because if you don't, you're never going to be building. So for me, the stability starts with the line. Once you could start to get the line situated, and I don't know when that's going to be. It's been 12 years. But once you get that foundation in place, you become the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions were a team that was a mess, like we have been for years. Now I watch the Lions, I say that's a team that's going to be great for the next 10 years because they have a line. They have a foundation. Once you get that in place, I think everything else falls in place after that. You make your upgrades where you need to make your upgrades, but we've got to get the line in place and we got to create some stability. As soon as Shane and Dable took the job, Pizzle, 4 years. That's it. I don't want to hear a repeat from anybody. I'm not changing my opinion. Giants could go 1-16 this year. I want Shane and Dable back for at least 2 more years.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
But that's the mentality that I feel like they need to have. Like give these guys, and hell, I'm usually optimistic. I would say 3 years, but I'm good with 4. Like, yeah, 4 years. Like it's that's what should happen.
We gave Dave 4. I'm giving them 4.
But I'm glad you said that, Chris. And like, that's to me is what that goes back to the thing about having like PTSD on the coaches. Is like, look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have done what we did. I'm not saying they weren't right decisions, but as a fan base, I wish we could all, this is the reason why I wanted to bring you on, Chris, and anybody on to have this conversation, is because as a fan base, we should have this idea of like, look, no matter what, we're supporting this guy, this coach, and this general manager. We're supporting them for 4 years. We're giving them 4 years. That doesn't necessarily mean the quarterback's going to still be here for 4 more years, but we're going to let this picture get painted out by the staff for 4 years. Like, they deserve that.
That's who has my support. The players, I mean, I'm going to root my ass off for the players. I'm going to be fair when I try to evaluate the players and talk about the players. I'm going to understand the situation the players are in. But whatever they decide to do, they wipe their hands clean with Jones, I'm good with it. They wipe their hands clean with Saquon Barkley, I'm good with it. You make the decisions. This is on you. I'm letting you do what you got to do. I was patient with Dave Gettleman, like you, and I got a lot of heat for it. But I said, you know what? He inherited a absolute mess. Now, in the end, he didn't make the mess much better, but I gave him the time that I felt was necessary to see what he could do. And I did see at least glimpses of hope while Dave was the GM. And then the last year, he lost me. The last year, you let Kevin Zeitler walk. You extend Logan Ryan to an extension. You don't draft an offensive lineman. And then you're rushing to the table to trade for Billy Price before the year starts. That's where he lost me. That's where I'm like, I'm out on Dave. And he made some boneheaded decisions before that, but he did have some offsetting moves. But I think Dave in the end proved what he is, for me at least. Very good scout. That's why he became a GM in the first place with the Carolina Panthers. I think his draft record as a Giants GM was at least slightly above average. He had some good late round picks. People forget about BJ Hill because he had to trade him because he couldn't fix the line.
He's still playing well.
That was a very good pick. Darius Slayton, very good pick for a late pick. Julian Love, very good pick for a late pick.
He played for money.
An undrafted free agent. He found value and he had good early draft picks. He was a solid drafter. Everything else for me, epic failure. His free agency, he had no consistency in terms of his vision on how to build a team. For me with Shane, it feels more stable. I don't know how he's going to be as an evaluator of talent. I don't know how he's going to be as a drafter, but I think he's got a clear plan. And he doesn't seem to be the type of guy that's going to shift away from that plan, at least so far. So I have a lot more faith in him than Dave Gettleman. But if I gave Dave 4 years, you bet your ass I'm giving Joe Shane 4 years. And if I'm giving Joe Shane 4 years, that means I'm giving Brian Dable 4 years because that's his guy. They came in together. And I need these guys to stay together. I need to give them at least 2 more years to see where this team could go. So I'm already starting to hear this chatter. Oh, fire Dable. That's just stupid. Yeah. You can't keep doing this. It's just dumb.
But you can't have the players lashing out at fans.
Yeah.
I look again, like I like the fire, right? Show me that you give a damn. Show me that you care. Again, I would have worded my words a little bit better if I was Evan Neal, but I also want to see that you give a damn. Kayvon, I want to see that you guys are pissed off about losing. But you can't have a group of players lashing out at the fans. That's one thing that they need to put they have to stop that immediately, Chris. Like, can Evan Neal ever, like, for example, and I'm not to change the subject, but he can't ever. I mean, how could he ever be supported now by the fan base?
Who DJ you said?
No,
Oh,
even Evan Neal.
Evan Neal.
Hey, how can the Giants I mean, Chris, you guys up there, y'all are wild. I mean, I watch baseball. I mean, Yankee fans are nuts, right? You
Yeah.
Mets fans, you guys are wild too, right? I mean, Knicks fans wild, right? I don't hate Evan. Like I'm still like, okay, Evan, let's make some plays, but like, man, he is to the like to me, he is just burned to Giants fans. And so but
It's
Joe Shane and Dable, they have to stop that right now. Like they have to. They have to they have to
at the end of the day, Pizzle, I think what Giants all we care about is if he New York fans, all we care about is if he produces. But what I will say is New York fans do not let up. And
No,
I
they
think
don't.
and I'm gonna tell you this right now, I'm a huge Knicks fan, as you know. I think
Yes.
Julius Randle gets way too much hate. Way too much hate. And I
Yeah.
get 2 years ago, Julius Randle did not play well in the playoffs when he was the sole guy before they got Jalen Brunson and they double and triple teamed him. Last year, the guy went out there basically limping, injured, and Knicks fans are destroying the guy. He played at a near, all pro level or whatever the term is in basketball. I think he was like second or third team All NBA all year. But the reason he gets a lot of hate is because Knicks fans don't like the way that he reacts to the fan base, the poor body language. And I think it's the same with Neal. The one thing I'll respect about Evan Ingram, and I did not like him
Oh
as a
no.
football player.
Oh no.
I
Okay.
did not like him as a football player
Yeah.
at all. He took it like a champ. He took it like a champ. He got more heat than any player I think I've ever seen in a New York Giants uniform, or he's right up there with anybody else. Rightfully so.
That is pretty true. Yeah, that is true.
Rightfully so.
Sure.
But he never said a word. He never said a peep. He never showed bad body language. He knew that the fans had a right to boo. He knew that the fans were the ones that paid his salary, the ones that supported him, that gave him the opportunity to play the game that he loves and makes millions of dollars. So for that, I always give him a lot of credit because I think Evan Ingram handled it with class.
And have you watched him play at Jacksonville at all?
Yeah, I don't watch every Jacksonville game, but
Yeah, no, sure. No.
Yeah.
But he's like he's having success in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just a location thing for him, if it's better for him to be in Florida than it is New Jersey. I don't know. But like
I think it was mental with Ingram. I think it was mental.
That's the reason why we're talking about this, Entertainer, is the fact that like how does that happen? Like, why does it happen? Why are players that we're like, look, this guy cannot play? It's like even I thought for sure like Eric Flowers would never, ever, ever get a position on any other team after the Giants.
Yeah.
And he still he was able to make it several, few more years in the league on other teams. He found success a little bit, I would say, in Washington.
Yeah.
Did he not? I mean, he
was a solid guard. He was a solid,
and that's
more
what
than I thought he would ever be. More than I thought he would.
That's what's a scary, proposition for me, Tainer, is like I'm one man, so I can't change a fan base. But what I hope is like the fan base eventually learns to chill out a little bit and let these guys figure out what the hell is going on, because clearly there's something internally broken here. And it's not just from the point of just go and replace this player with so-and-so, go and replace this player with so-and-so, go and replace this, because we've done that. We've done that, Chris, over so many years now. We've replaced coaches, general managers, quarterbacks.
Not so many quarterbacks. Eli was here for a long time.
Well,
but
Gino got a little play there.
For one game against the Ravens. Yeah.
But yeah, we did. But we did. I mean, I just feel like, Chris, if we went down that process, and again, I'll say this too. I've enjoyed Danny's story.
Yeah.
Let me say that. Like, there's a part of me that enjoys
for me, Pizzle, and I have no, like you said, that's me. I don't have an agenda. Sometimes you're gonna
I've never assumed you had an agenda.
Sometimes you're gonna disagree with me. That's what happens when you put your opinions out on the internet. You're not always gonna agree with me. I want to look like the biggest idiot and asshole in the history of New York Giants fandom. I want Daniel Jones to become the greatest quarterback of all time. I want that. I'm rooting for Daniel Jones, and I'm always going to give these guys what I feel is a fair opportunity. And to me, it's like Benjamin Button with Daniel Jones in comparison to Eli Manning. It's reverse. Eli Manning had the proper support system the first half of his career, and then the Giants failed him. And to this point,
Yes.
Daniel Jones has endured what Eli Manning endured over the first half of his career. And what I'm hoping is, whether it's Daniel Jones or whether it's the guy that replaces him, the quarterback that comes in is we're able to set him up the way that we were able to set Eli Manning up. And that is why Eli Manning was successful. If Eli Manning came into a situation like we've had from the start with Daniel Jones, look at what Eli Manning had. And I love Eli Manning. Eli Manning is my favorite athlete, not just Giant, my favorite athlete, if you want to call him that, of all time. I absolutely love Eli Manning. Look what he came into. He came into with Tiki Barber, one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in football when he first came into the league. He came in with Jeremy Shockey, a top 3 or 4 tight end in the NFL, the best offensive line in the NFL, if not top 2 or 3, the best defensive line in football. He had Amani Toomer. He gets Plaxico Burress, and he had stability. He had Tom Coughlin from the second he took the job. Okay. And then you look at what Daniel Jones has had, and it's been a disgrace. And until we get stability, this team's going nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere. I don't care who
that's the key though. That's the key though, Chris, is like they have to find stability first as an organization. And there's also, but I think the fan base also has to find some stability as well, like within themselves. Like I get the frustration. I get that they're upset, but every part about this, there has to be some stability. There has to be. Yeah. I mean, you have to find something there. And so I 100% agree with you on that. Like they have to find some stability there. And that's what's really frustrating, is because I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know how you ever get it. I definitely still feel like, Chris, like they can still beat non-playoff teams this season. Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of those on their schedule.
Patriots, I mean, maybe the Packers, Raiders,
Patriots, Packers, Jets. I mean, that Jets game,
it'll be close.
Who knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, who the hell knows? I mean, they got a really nice defense, but who knows where Zach Wilson will be during that time? Danny's always played really good against Washington. I know Washington's a better team than they have been in the past, but he's always played good against Washington for whatever reason. I don't know why. But I mean, I'll be honest. That one against the Cowboys, the 2 against the Eagles. I mean, tough.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're gonna be tough games for the Giants because for whatever reason they haven't had much success with that, and so it's extremely frustrating to know that that's still out there for them. Do you have? And we'll get ready to close this thing up, but I guess all we really have right now is hope, isn't it? I mean, that's really all we've got.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think it's going to get better. The question is how much better this year, but I think it's going to get better. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it's looked. I think the defense has at least shown glimpses of progress. And I actually, as bad as they looked in terms of tackling and fundamentals against the 49ers, I actually thought you started to see it then. Like they started to show it then. They were getting some pressure on Purdy. They were batting some balls. They were creating turnover opportunities. Hopefully soon those balls start to go our way and we get the lucky bounce. This past week, albeit against the watered down offensive line against Seattle, they started to get some pressure, obviously, throughout that game. So I think it's going to get better this year. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they've looked. And I just have way too much respect for Brian Daboll as a head coach. Like, I think
he did win Coach of the Year last year.
He won Coach of the Year, and I think they'll be more competitive. But I still think we're staring at a 6-win season, 5 or 6 win season. I just think the schedule is too challenging at this point, and we're not on the level of the Dallas Cowboys. We're not on the level of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're not on the level of the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins. I hope I'm wrong, obviously, but that's the way I see it. But I do think we'll show glimpses of progress throughout the course of the year. I think the offense will get better once we get Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley back, but I don't think it's going to be the offense that we envisioned going into the year. An offense that could sling the rock and start to open it up. I don't think we're there yet. And I think the biggest reason, at least for me, is because of the line. I don't think we have the line to be able to support a quarterback to drop back 35, 40 times, throw the football, and win football games. I just don't. I don't think we have that type of offense unless you're going up against a really bad team. But who cares at that point? When you go up against good football teams, we can't do what what the Chiefs do. We can't do what the Bills do because we
Yeah.
can't hold up blocks. That's why I said all offseason, not just me, most Giant fans said all offseason, Evan Neal was the key to this team because we needed that stability on both sides of the line. And of course, Thomas being hurt certainly has hurt that too. So I think this team, like I said earlier, needs to get back to what they were last year, which sucks. We wanted to see more progress as an offense, but I think they need to dial it back a bit and realize what we currently are. And that's a team that has to win ugly. We can't beat ourselves, and we got to grind out football games. And I think they will get back to that, but we'll see how it plays out. I do think we'll get better, but I still think we're like a 6-win team this year.
Well, it's funny because you brought up the next two games. I'm not so sure how I feel about Miami. I don't know how I don't know how to really look at that game. I don't feel very confident, I'll be honest.
Miami, I think we're gonna get killed.
I mean, I don't have a lot, but for some reason, I have a sneaky feeling about the Buffalo game. And I think it's because, Buffalo's going to be coming back from London. And the Giants are going to hear for, a week after the Miami game about how, poor they play on Monday or how poor they play on prime time. They're just going to hear that. And if they have any pride, any heart whatsoever, and hopefully Thomas and Barkley are both back. I have a funny feeling about the Buffalo game. I don't know why. I don't know. And of course, if they were able to somehow get that, it would be right. We would be.
It would change your opinion if they
change your whole damn.
You get the 2-4. Suddenly, you convince yourself. You got Washington, the Jets, and the Raiders. Maybe you win all three. Maybe win 2 out of 3.
And at the end of the day, both of them are big mountains to climb, right? I mean,
but I agree. Preseason, I agree with you on the Buffalo game. I don't agree now, but preseason, I actually picked that as a game we were going to win. That was my surprise win of the year. And my major line of reasoning was the familiarity with Dable and Shane with Buffalo, much like Wink last year with Lamar and the Ravens. And I think that was a factor in that game. And I thought it would be a factor with the Buffalo Bills. But I watched the Bills are playing the way they're playing right now. I think Buffalo's the best team in the NFL right now. The way they played the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you. It's funny because I was watching them. I was watching them on Sunday, and I thought, if there was ever a time for the Bills to get back to the Super Bowl, it would be this year.
They're incredible.
They're a great football team. But I'm kind of going off on the idea of that is going to be a tough situation for them to come back from London, to travel again to play the Giants on prime. I mean, there's some. It's funny because I think we had some things going against us in terms of the San Francisco game. I think we were probably going to lose the San Francisco game regardless. But the fact is, it was a short week. It was a back-to-back road game for the Giants. There were some things going against them there. And to me, I think there's some things going against Buffalo when they play us. It just comes down to the fact that do we have the guys? Do we have the horses to compete with them? That's going to be the tough thing, tough question to ask. And, Dable's going to know some what kinks Josh Allen does have. I mean, there's going to be
that's the one.
There's going to be something about that it can be a competitive game, even as great as Buffalo is. And it would just be like the Giants, wouldn't it? To have this struggle, to then go play a really good team and to perform and say, okay, I'm buying back into this team, just so they can bust my balls even.
I wouldn't be stunned if it's a competitive game. I think Buffalo's going to beat us pretty handily, but I wouldn't be stunned because of the things we just talked about, the familiarity, they know Allen, blah, 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 blah. But we'll see. I still definitely am down in the dumps. I've definitely lowered my expectations for the year. That's for sure.
Sure.
And I think I'm at a point over these next 2 weeks, which is sad to say. I just want to see progress. I just want to see. I want a moral victory against Miami because I don't think we're going to win. I want to see progress. I want to see the offense start to get some kind of identity. I want to see that pass rush continue to improve like they've done the last 2 weeks. Just get better, start to get better. And over the course of the year, maybe this team does hit a stride. But I just don't think we're with those teams. I just and I talked myself into it with Seattle in terms of the variables. 4 extra days to prepare. They're traveling across the country.
11 days. Yeah.
So, like you say, I will not let myself get reeled in. This team needs to show me a lot before I'm willing to say we could compete with the big boys right now.
Yeah. Well, look, I know you got a show with Bad Dog tonight. So I'll go ahead and wrap this thing up and just want to thank you for coming on. I reached out to a lot of different content creators, and Entertainah was the one that answered the bell. So I really do appreciate you, Chris, coming on. I love I enjoy talking to Chris. I definitely disagree with him on some things.
You should.
But
It'd be boring
but
for you and everything.
but we also have a lot of similarities in a lot of ways, like you were mentioning about Eli. Like there is some common ground there. So, but just want to thank Chris for coming on. I appreciate you guys watching, hanging out with us, and talking a little bit. The best thing I feel like content creators can do right now more than ever is mix up with one another and just talk about this travesty that is the 2023 Giants and try to find some type of hope. And so it was great to sit down and talk with Chris. You guys all know who he is. I don't have to direct you to his YouTube page. It's funny, Chris. There's times when you have posted in the past on like Twitter and stuff, and I want to comment, and I'm like, I'm just gonna leave this alone because, and I want to say something, but I just know that you have you have this allegiance of followers that I'm like, I just don't want to hear it from Chris's followers today. Like, I just, there's sometimes I can't help myself and I want to chime in, and you know, but sometimes I'm just like, man, I just can't. I just know he'll have a group of them that will just be hounding on me like wild dogs, and I'm just not, that's not. I'm not mean that in a bad way. It's just you get what I'm saying. But
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta
listen,
start following.
I've always tried to work with everybody. That's the mindset
Mm.
I have taken since I've come on YouTube. Outside of, obviously, I don't need to speak on it, but I try to work with everybody. I try to work with everybody. I try to, yeah, that's what I try to be. I try to bring the Giants community together. That's what I've always tried to do. When I first started on YouTube, it you were here long before me. It
Yeah,
seemed like a very divided place, the Giants
yeah.
community. When I
I remember we reached you when you were very, young into it. You reached out and we chatted. We texted. And, I think you were gonna do, if I'm not, you were gonna do, like, a cooking show.
That's what
So
I did.
what?
Yeah, with my friend
Yeah, yeah.
Lee. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
started
You
doing
were doing,
it with
like,
the
a cook
Giants.
and yeah, and so, to see where you went with it, you know, uh, I like to mess with you at times just because of your takes, not because of the person you are. But I like to just mess with but that's with everybody, right? There's I was talking some junk to Kid Blue today, just messing with him a little bit. And he was all, he was like, you don't know how to break down film, Pizzle. I'm not breaking down film with you. But just, just messing with him, just busting his balls a little bit. So I like to bust Chris's balls a little bit. Pause on that. I like to bust on Bad Dog's balls too. Pause. But anyways, it's always fun to chat it up and talk Giants football, especially during times like this, man.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it's good to come on and talk things out. I think like you said, I think people need it. I say it all the time. I understand why some people don't like you because you ruffle feathers. That's what you do. That's your thing.
I
But
do. I like to bust balls.
I'm a loyal guy. When
Yeah.
I first start, there's times I'm gonna be honest with you, Pizzle. I'm like, yeah, that guy's an asshole. There's times where you do things where I'm like, he's being a bit of a jerk. But
Yeah, I am.
loyal guy. When I first started on YouTube, I say it all the time. You were very accommodating. You reached out to
Mhm.
me, um, for a guy that was a nobody. I just started, and I've tried to emulate that. Yeah, I don't even want to say you inspired that. I think I give the Knicks community a lot of credit actually. Where I was kind of going with that when I first said it. When I first started, the Giants community was so divided, and
Yes.
The Knicks community was so welcoming to me. And I always said to myself, that's the way I want it to be with the Giants. I
Mhm.
want to work with people. I want to build one another up. That's just my mindset on things. But when it came to me, when I first started, you were very accommodating. I think I did my first live stream with you in terms of a play-by-play. I think
Mhm.
if it wasn't the first, it was the second. It was a primetime 49ers game where we
Yeah.
won. That was like our only win that year, or it felt it like it anyway. Um, and yeah, I mean, like you said, you've taken shots here and there, but you've always been nice to me for the most part, especially
Mhm.
when I first started. So I've always tried to, I'll work with anybody for the most part.
The
So
thing about it is it's the Giants that make me feel like when I feel some kind of way about the team or a player, Daniel Jones or just that I feel I am 100% committed to to that belief all the way. You know, that doesn't it's never to me anything about personal about who the person is. Like it's never about that, right? You know, if we're talking about something about other than the Giants, you know, a TV show, right? Or a movie or what that's a different thing. But when it comes to the Giants, I'm one of these fans that I am just such a I believe what I believe and I'm sticking to it kind of deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so when I see somebody which again, I love other I love having other content creators out there. But when I see them kind of attack that my way of thinking, it's like I have to say something to not necessarily defend myself, but to defend the idea that I'm thinking of. You know,
Mhm.
so it's like, let's say, you know, if going back to Daniel Jones, it's like if I believe in Daniel Jones and someone is against that, it's like I have to be against that argument. It
You
doesn't mean
should
I
be.
don't like the person. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean I think the person is a terrible person. It doesn't mean that at all. It just to me it means like it's an attack under the idea of what I have, and I want to combat that. You
Yeah.
know, I want to say no, I feel like it should be this way. And that's to me is I will always say that I am, you know, I am infected with the New York Football Giants in a lot of ways. I bleed blue, you know, I think just like you do and a lot of others do as well. And so a lot of ways, it's not even me, the person that's having that argument, you know, like being the ass, being the jerk. It's the Giants fan in me that just can't help himself.
Listen, I'm the same. I react differently than you, but I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I break down not mentally, but I love this team so much that I can't. I'll give you a story. Long before it was on YouTube, when the Giants played the Eagles with the game with the Miracle at the Meadowlands Part 2, I was at a bar with my
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. That was all like it was during Christmas time.
It was around Christmas time.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, and everybody's bugging me, all my Jets friends, because I have a lot of friends at the time who were big Jets fans. And the whole game, I'm bashing them. I'm like, oh, because the Giants were killing them the entire game.
Or
As soon as that play happened, I turned my phone off. I swear to God, this is a true story. I turned my phone off. I didn't turn my cell phone on for 4 days. I couldn't communicate with the outside world. That's the way I am. And
yeah.
that's the way I was after the first week against the Dallas Cowboys. I
Mhm.
couldn't, I was so depressed and I didn't want to deal and even look at the toxicity that I knew awaited on YouTube, that I knew awaited on Twitter. I didn't even want to look at it. I didn't want to
Yeah.
communicate with it. I can't cope with it because I love this team so much that it drives me mad. It drives me nuts.
It's funny. Because I know you have a brother as well,
Yeah.
and I have a brother, and you obviously know the bond that you have with your brother.
Yeah.
And my brother's just a couple years younger than me, and we were just having dinner together one night, and it was actually about a week and a half ago, and he just said to me, he just randomly said to me, Dan, and he was dead serious. He goes, Daniel Jones is the fourth best quarterback in the NFC East right now, right? And I lost my cool.
Yeah.
Just that comment alone made me lose my cool. Like and next thing you know, dinner was over. I was done with it. And it's stuff like that where it's like I just can't have I can be a nice person, but when it comes to Giants football and it's against what I believe, I can't be a nice. I'm incapable sometimes of being a nice person. Again, I love my brother just like you love your brother. I love, but like when it's like, and again, I don't have a relationship with Daniel Jones, right? I don't, Daniel Jones could be a jerk, in real, off the field, right? He could be this, but I just have such a belief that when I hear stuff like that, I just lose my cool. I just I'm completely lost and I'm a different. So anyways, I say all that because I can be an absolute ass and I'm 100% of knowledge of that. But it's all because of the New York Football Giants. Bottom
Yeah.
line. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
But anyways, Chris, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Have a great stream with old bad dog tonight.
Yeah.
You guys are killing it. You guys are doing great. And so you guys go check that out tonight. But anyways, just want to thank Chris again for joining me, and hopefully our season gets turned around. Let's do it. Let's do something like this maybe later in the year.
Yeah, when we're 7-3, we're gonna win the next 6 games. We're in great shape.
All right, you guys have a good night.
Good night, guys.